And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We're talking the Chinese Grand Prix. Yes, our preview probably a day late. Wanted to do it on Monday. Bit too much news, but let's get into it. Sadly, Chinese Grand Prix driver. This time, he is now the Ferrari test driver. But what a Grand Prix we have in store. We still don't know 110% the order. We know McLaren have got a good car. What on earth happened to Ferrari in Australia? Is it going to happen again in China? Can Max Verstappen challenge for the win? All this and more. So weather was a big part of the Chinese Grand Prix. Let's have a quick look at, well, the Australian Grand Prix. Will it be a big part, of the Chinese Grand Prix even? And when you look at it, it kind of looks a bit okay. It is a sprint race weekend, interestingly. But there we go. Sunny, 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 sunny on the Friday. Very sunny. Yeah, looking good. Again, sunny, sunny, sunny on the Sunday, and the Saturday, 24 degrees, 25 degrees, sunny, changing to partly cloudy in the afternoon. When we look at Saturday, sunny all the way around for the sprint race and qualifying. So, not too bad. It's not looking too bad for the Chinese Grand Prix. It is race week. It is F1 at 75. Let's get into when the Chinese Grand Prix is on, and particularly for the Brits, because we've got the Sky F1 here. And yes, to be fair, it was this happened at the Chinese Grand Prix a few years ago. The Toro Rosso deciding to brake, and its front two tyres just went kapow. Anyway, moving on, let's then have a look at the what's going down. So, Friday, March the 21st, F1 Academy is back. And at 1 a.m. will be the practice on Friday. But then 3 a.m. is the Chinese Grand Prix Practice 1. Session starts actually at 3:30. Sky coverage starts at 3. And then 6:45 is the Chinese Grand Prix qualifying session, which starts 7:30 in the morning. Yes, only one practice session, guys. Only the one practice session for a sprint race weekend. And I tell you what, bear in mind, these cars, are new. And it is the second race. Oh, it's not going to be easy, is it? Now, when we move to Saturday, we've got the sprint build-up. The sprint. 3 a.m. Whoa, in the middle of the night, essentially for most. And then 7 a.m., a slightly better hour, a better morning, the Chinese Grand Prix qualifying. Then on Sunday, we've got race 1 for the F1 Academy is 4:45 on the Saturday. Then the F1 Race Academy 2 is 2:50. Build up for the Chinese Grand Prix, if you are in the UK, 5:30. And normally I think on F1, the F1 TV, it starts about an hour and a half to an hour before as well. But 7 a.m. for you Brits is the Chinese Grand Prix. But I know, we're not all British here. So let's then get into our preview, the rest of the preview for our Chinese Grand Prix, shall we? And here we are. Yes, our preview for the Chinese Grand Prix. Thank you very much. So, breathe, shall we? Let's have a look then at the Chinese Grand Prix. And more importantly, let's have a look at the Chinese track. It's been around since 2004. It started, I think, the same time Bahrain did, which is quite interesting. Let's get into our track guide, shall we? So I'm going to pause it, though, for 1 second, and I'm going to make myself magically disappear like a Harry Potter character. There we go. And I guess, shall we make the headline disappear? It's kind of a tiny bit distracting, isn't it? Yeah. See you later. So, Chinese Grand Prix. Let's go then, shall we? So we're just about to start the lap, and as you can see here, you are going to see the entry to the pit lane here. Yeah, Lewis Hamilton doesn't really like to talk about it too much, but we are in now sector 1, the first DRS zone, the start-finish straight, and then a really tight corner that goes on forever. Yes, you can pass it on the start. You're going to have cars left to you, right to you, all around you, and so this becomes a really big pinch zone then into turn number 3, which then turns into turn number 4. Now we're getting now towards, it seems quite a short sector, the end of sector 1 into sector 2 into turn number 6, which is can be, if you've got a willing partner, an overtaking zone. And it was in these corners, I think, that Lewis Hamilton took the lead in 2011 in sector 2 from Sebastian Vettel. So we are into turn number 7 and which is almost flat. Turn number 8, it's going to be interesting to see how fast that is in qualifying. But then turn number 9 and 10, basically, kind of like a double apex corner almost, with a well, they're kind of a tiny straight. Now, this is a really important. You can pass here, going from turn number 10 to turn number 11. This is now the end of Sector 2, beginning of Sector 3, where one of the most important DRS detection zones is. We've just crossed it there, and at some point you are going to want absolute balls to the wall. Go down that start-finish straight with full bananas, DRS flap open. You want to use your airs as much as you can. Sometimes we have 3. I think I've seen 4 abreast here. The most obvious overtaking here, all the way into that hairpin and turn number 14. Believe it or not, this is another turn. Yeah, that is number 15. And then we go into number 16. Cars do spin here sometimes. Been qualifying, we've seen it before. Not for obviously us, who we're piloting as Zhao Guanyu in the 2024 Kick Sauber. Sadly, not here this weekend, but there we go. That is pretty much that's pretty much the lap. So hello again. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. It is a race where you can pass. What I will say is it's most certainly a race that you can follow people, I think, a bit easier because you got that banked corner before the long start finish straight, and it's different to the Australian Grand Prix. It is a permanent circuit, unlike the street-esque park vibe that you get in the Australian Grand Prix. But let's now talk about the drivers, shall we? Let's talk about who we think is going to do well. Now, I'm going to do it in the order that we did of worst to best drivers from Australia, because I think, let's talk about this guy here. Let's talk. Who is this guy? This guy is a man called Liam Lawson, and boy, I think he is under pressure. Although Red Bull have come out and people have suggested, give him 2, 3, 4, 5 races to see where he really is. Australia is an outlier, and to be fair to Liam Lawson, he was the only one that didn't know Australia very well. But the pressure's going to be on again. People, and I'm not saying necessarily from the team, but it's going to be from the media, because the media are occasionally really, really harsh, aren't they? The media are not particularly nice, let's be honest. So, and it's from this media where they're going to be asking a lot of questions for Liam Lawson. Sometimes unfair. People have already, the amount of memes, I hope he stays off social media, they've compared him to Perez, which again I think is a bit unfair. Funny for some, I guess. Yes, we can all get a bit of a chuckle, but ultimately I think it's unfair. I expect him to do a lot better here than he has done, and than he will do at the Australian Grand Prix. The first race is gone. The pressure for that first race is kind of off. It does remain a bit, sadly, with Liam, but I'm sure he will show us what he can do. The absolute minimum is getting out of Q1, getting into Q3, failing that, being around the top 10, within about 2 or 3 tenths of Verstappen. I think everyone will be happy, but at the very least, within half a second of Verstappen, and I think you will. So next up, we got Fernando Alonso, who did a whoopsie-daisy at the Australian Grand Prix, but I think he's going to be okay here. We still don't know. The Aston Martin, yes, they scored points with Stroll, but the problem with Australia is, other than seeing the McLarens being quite dominant and Max very much the third fastest person in Australia, it was a mixed weekend and it was a wet race. At least this way, when we saw the weather earlier, it remains consistent, which I think is quite important. So I think Alonso will do fairly well. I still think he'll do well to get points in what is going to be a normal Grand Prix weekend. The same could potentially be said of Ollie Behrman. And well, to be fair, both Haas guys, people have been suggesting that Haas could be the slowest team, not Stake Sauber, which is going to be quite interesting. But just like Liam Lawson, I expect Ollie Behrman to have a much better weekend, and I think he could match, at minimum he's going to match Esteban Ocon. So Williams, Carlos Sainz, okay, he ended up at the last corner on the opening part of the race in Australia. I think he'll do a lot better. What's going to be interesting, I think, is the comparison between him and Alex Albon, both in qualifying and the race. So even if Albon qualifies Carlos Sainz, it's going to be really interesting to compare what their race pace will be between the two. I think Williams could do very well here. Once again, we are thinking they could be the 5th or 6th fastest team. The Chinese Grand Prix, unlike the Australian Grand Prix, it is, as I mentioned, a permanent circuit. I think we're going to get a bit more closer to the answer. So, Jack Doohan, I think he did really well in Australia, in spite of what happened in the race. Okay, it was wet. However, he pushed Gasly. At times, he was faster than Gasly. Qualifying, he got held up with so many cars. So I don't think he did as well as he could have done. If he's anywhere close to Gasly, once again, he is basically helping his career. He's saying, yeah, Colapinto, I'm better. I'm going to be staying in this team. And to be fair to him, in the press conference in Australia, he said he's got a 1-year deal, so he's going to be here all year. Yeah, well done. Well done, Jack Doohan. And also, Isaac Hadjar. Now, the sad thing about this, everyone's talking about the crying gate thing with obviously him and Hamilton. We did a video about it. The way obviously Helmut Marko spoke about it. Martin Brundle's come out and obviously mentioned it as well, that, you know, Red Bull aren't really the kind of team to put an arm around the shot. I think Christian Horner is, to be fair. As much as people say things about Christian Horner that aren't particularly fans of Red Bull, I do think when it comes to things like that, I do think Christian Horner, unlike Helmut Marko, is the type of person to put his arm around him. Yes, he is the Red Bull boss. He's not the V-Car boss, but still, I think Isaac Hadjar will do really well. I mean, he was the highest qualifying rookie in Australia, and I think he potentially will do just as well here. As well, I think Bortoletto, I mean, this is the guy that out-qualified Nico Hülkenberg in Australia. So I think we already know, both him and Hadjar, how talented they are from their Formula 2 days. I think it will continue. I think he has to at least match up on the same row, for example, with Nico Hülkenberg, and I think that run will continue. Next up, we have Esteban Ocon, who will himself, I imagine, get up on Friday morning and Saturday morning, expect to out-qualify Ollie Behrman. I think that's what probably Haas expects to do. If he doesn't, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Ollie Behrman, everyone is saying, and we are too at the hot lap, that if Ollie Behrman beats Esteban Ocon over this year and the next year, he's surely assured for Ferrari. I think, because we know Esteban Ocon is absolutely no slouch. So let's talk about this guy here. Yeah, he did not have, everyone's saying Ferrari's worst debut since 2009 for a race. And everyone's saying a shocking debut. Other people have won their races on the debut of Ferrari. Yeah, but to be fair to Lewis Hamilton, the people that won their debut, for example, Alonso, for example, Kimi Raikkonen, won on their debut and did better. I think Vettel potentially did better as well. Yeah, he did. They did have a better car compared to the competition, to be fair to Hamilton. And there was, in Australia, Ferrari did risk the biscuit, so to speak, in terms of staying out on those tyres, thinking they had a chance of winning. Sadly, that was obviously not the case. But I still think Lewis Hamilton not doing. I think he'll have a much stronger weekend in China. He's won in China, just like he's won in Australia before. It is a permanent racetrack, and I don't think he will be stuck. For example, he was stuck behind Albon, despite I think being the faster car. I think if that happens, for example, in Australia, he's going through. He was faster than Alex Albon. He will find. I honestly believe he will find a way through. So next up, we've got Pierre Gasly, who didn't do too bad. Once again, like Williams, either the 5th or 6th fastest team. The Chinese Grand Prix is really going to help us get a handle on who is going to be that faster team, and it may well be, circuit dependent. It's going to be interesting, isn't it? Williams, I think, potentially have the stronger driver lineup because obviously Jack Doohan's a rookie, so that may take it into account. I think Williams will ultimately come the Sunday potentially have scored more points than Alpine, but not necessarily in qualifying. Who knows? But the boys, Alex Albon did qualify very well in Australia, didn't he? So the other Ferrari driver, Charles Leclerc, who had a good start in Australia. They didn't qualify very well on the 4th row. I think Ferrari going to have to, well, they're going to want to at least be on those first 3 rows. I think at absolute minimum, and I think they potentially will. The issue's going to be is they weren't happy with the setup on the car. Now they come into a Chinese Grand Prix with only that one practice session, and that if Ferrari have any issues with understanding their car for the Chinese Grand Prix with that one practice session, it's going to really hinder them. It is, particularly with this whole new FIA DRS wing rule. And will the ring rule affect McLaren more? And that's, Oscar Piastri. This is the man that could have maybe challenged for the win in Australia. But this is also the man who made a mistake like Lando Norris, but made a bigger mistake, but never gave up, did he? He hit that reverse button like a champ, and he ended up getting a couple of points, which may well be really crucial come the end of the season. But I think Oscar Piastri is probably one of the favourites for the podium, at the very least. Will he beat what appears to be an on-form Lando Norris in a normal race? I don't think he will. I don't think he will at the moment. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. How much did that Australia knock his confidence? Probably not. I think a lot of it's going to depend on how he does in the sprint race. The sprint race is going to give us a real good idea, even on tyre wear, because as we know, that McLaren, everyone is saying the McLaren is very good on tyre wear. That's the massive strength from McLaren. Next up, we've got Hadjar's teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, who was absolutely fantastic on Australia. Really qualified high, really good. I think you couldn't really say a bad word about him. Just a bit, I think, unlucky in the race rather than anything else. And we are all surprised how strong that the Racing Bulls, the Visa Cash App RB team actually are. We didn't give them a prayer at the end of testing. I don't think anyone did, and they did really strong in Australia. The big question is that just an outlier? And we're really going to find out at the Chinese Grand Prix. I'm really looking forward to that. Next up, we've got Lance Stroll. I kind of expect Alonso to beat him at the Chinese Grand Prix, but he did very well in Australia in the wet. This is not in the wet. This is also returning, this is the return of the whoops-a-daisy. I have just hit Daniel Ricciardo up the rear, kind of like not concentrating moment. So it's going to be interesting to see if we have any not concentrating moments with Lance Stroll. I guess we'll have to see. So George Russell, a solid weekend in Australia where he finished, he survived, and it was like the parting of the sea, like it was for Moses. It was people having incidents all around him while he kept his head. Brilliant. I mean, absolutely what you want for the Mercedes lead driver. I'm potentially more of the same. I don't think more of the same for this guy, though, sadly. Nico Hülkenberg. Simply because Australia was an outlier. It was a wet race, and he absolutely did the maximum I think he could have done for the stake Sauber F1 team, and scoring those. I think it was all important 6 points, which is going to be really important come the end of the season. I don't think they're going to be as strong here, but I guess we'll have to see. So Alexander Albon, what a weekend he had. Yes, it was fifth, then it was fourth, then it was fifth. But what more can you ask? I'm expecting more of the same. The interesting thing is, how is he going to go against Carlos Sainz? So no one really gave him hope in Australia. He knows the team well. Both of them know the Chinese Grand Prix, track. I guess I don't think there's going to be any advantage or disadvantage there. Is Alex Albon going to be out qualifying Carlos Sainz? Possibly. I'm going to find that fascinating. So let's talk about the man that nearly won the Australian Grand Prix. Now, going into the weekend, not many people gave Red Bull or Max Verstappen a bit of a prep, other than the Max Factor. And we did have that Max Factor in the race. Yes, there were safety cars that helped. Yes, Lando Norris's McLaren was a tiny bit damaged, but still, Max Verstappen took absolutely everything. He did make a mistake. It was wet, but without a pun intended, I think, other than that mistake, when the opportunities came, he maximised them, so to speak, just like his namesake, and I think he's going to do that at the Chinese Grand Prix. I think if McLaren are as fast as they were in Australia, it may be a struggle if he wins, but putting pressure up, as we know, putting pressure on people does things, and it opens up opportunities, which I think may well be, very possibly happen to Max. So I think a lot of people are now suggesting that Lando Norris is the title favourite based on one race, which is kind of unfair, but I understand, hyperbole, the media, etc. You've got to say that one of the two McLaren drivers currently are looking very good, looking very comfortable. But as we know from the 2024 season, the way the Red Bull developed, things can go wrong fairly, fairly quickly. For example, Red Bull with their braking, their special braking, ended up getting taken away around Miami time, and suddenly they didn't seem to be as fast. Coincident? I don't know. But the same now could be said of McLaren with that mini DRS. Is it going to have an effect? And that's why this practice session is key for everyone. Anyone in particular with a rear wing that might have a mini DRS. Having said that, there's more to the McLaren than that. There's more to it because they are very good at looking after their tyres. And China does have quite a few corners where you really want to look after the tyres. So last but not least, we have for what was for us the man of the race, Kimi Antonelli. Absolutely fantastic. He did such an, in hindsight, after what was a disappointing qualifying, he has now put himself, I think, under more pressure in a funny way, because now we're expecting even better from him. Could he get his first F1 podium? That's completely not out of the question. But yeah, I think he did himself, after qualifying in the race, really, really well. Kept his head. Yes, he had that whoops-a-daisy with just after he got past Holcomb, but then he kept his head, and then he did very well. So thank you very much, Kimi Antonelli. Well done. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much it then for our Chinese Grand Prix preview. We'll have more information as we go through the week about the Chinese Grand Prix, more about the teams. I think the teams are going to be there possibly on Wednesday, possibly Wednesday. And then obviously we've got the Thursday media day, so there's going to be interesting stories coming out throughout the week. So if you can, stay tuned. And if you're not, please give us a subscribe. That would be absolutely fantastic. But you just watching this video is more than enough for us. So if you want to do a bit more, hit that like button, comment below, let us know what you think about the Chinese Grand Prix. But until then, we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much again for watching, but above all else, stay safe.